My name is Jack Kessler, and I should have known something was wrong when my wife Kayla started caring about her ex-boyfriend's wedding more than our own anniversary. It was a Tuesday night in Castle Lake, New York, one of those small towns where everybody knows everybody's business except, apparently, mine. I was sitting in my garage, nursing a beer and pretending to fix an old carburetor, when I heard Kayla's voice echoing through our little house like a fire alarm. "It's completely unfair, Maddie. I mean, we dated for 3 years. 3 years! And now Dominic thinks he can just pretend I don't exist?" I set down my wrench and listened. Through the thin walls of our 1970s ranch house, her voice carried every dramatic syllable. "I know, right? Like, hello, we have history. And now he's marrying some random girl from Albany, and I'm not even invited? It's insulting. Random girl from Albany. That would be Sarah Mitchell, Dominic's fiancée, who actually seemed pretty nice the one time I'd met her at the grocery store. But Kayla had a way of making everyone who wasn't Kayla sound like a personal insult to her existence. I took another sip of beer and tried to focus on the carburetor. Kayla had been obsessing over this wedding for weeks, ever since she'd seen the engagement announcement in the local paper. The way she talked about it, you'd think she was the one getting married. "No, Maddie, I'm not being crazy. I'm being realistic. Dominic and I had something special, and everyone in town knows it." Special. Right. What they'd had was 3 years of on-again, off-again drama that had provided entertainment for half the town. I'd heard the stories from Russ, my old army buddy who bartended at Murphy's Tavern and collected gossip like baseball cards. According to Russ, Kayla and Dominic had broken up at least 6 times during their relationship, usually in spectacular public fashion. There was the time she threw his clothes out of his apartment window. The time he showed up at her work with flowers and an apology letter that was apparently so over the top that her co-workers were still talking about it 2 years later. The time they had a screaming match in the middle of Main Street that required police intervention. But that was all before me. I'd moved to Castle Lake 3 years ago after my discharge from the Army, looking for a quiet place to start a small construction business. I'd met Kayla at Murphy's Tavern during a trivia night, and she'd seemed different then. Calmer. More mature. We'd been married for 18 months now, and most of the time, things were good. Kayla worked part-time at the local real estate office, I had my construction business, and we had a nice little routine. But lately, ever since this wedding announcement, she'd been acting strange. "I just think it's weird that he didn't invite me," she was saying now. "I mean, we're both adults. We can be civil. That was rich, coming from someone who'd once keyed her ex-boyfriend's car because he'd started dating someone else. I finished my beer and decided to head inside. The carburetor wasn't going anywhere, and I was curious to see Kayla's face while she was having this conversation. I found her in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of our bed with her phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing one of my old army t-shirts and a pair of shorts, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked young and innocent, which was part of her charm and, I was beginning to suspect, part of her strategy. She looked up when I walked in and gave me a quick smile, the kind that said, "Everything's normal, nothing to see here." "Hey, Maddie, Jack just got home. Can I call you back?" She hung up and stretched, arching her back in a way that would have been distracting if I hadn't been so focused on her conversation. "How was your day, babe?" she asked, standing up and walking over to give me a kiss. "Fine," I said. "Finished the Henderson job." "What was that about?" "Oh, just girl talk," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Maddie was telling me about some drama at work." I nodded, but something felt off. Kayla was a terrible liar, which was usually endearing. Right now, it was just suspicious. "I'm going to grab a shower," I said. "Okay, I'll start dinner." She headed toward the kitchen, and I went into our walk-in closet to grab some clean clothes. That's when I saw it. Hanging in the back corner, behind her winter coats, was a dress I'd never seen before. It was navy blue, elegant, and expensive looking. The kind of dress you'd wear to a fancy event. the kind of dress you'd wear to a wedding. I checked the tag. Size 6, which was Kayla's size. There was a receipt pinned to the hanger from Bella's Boutique, the nicest dress shop in town. The date on the receipt was from last week. The price was $300, which was way more than we usually spent on clothes. But what really caught my attention was the handwritten note on the receipt. For the Mitchell Reynolds wedding, Saturday, June 15th. June 15th. That was this Saturday. Dominic's wedding. I stood there for a moment, holding the receipt, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. If Kayla wasn't invited to the wedding, why did she have a dress specifically for the wedding? And why was she hiding it? I heard her moving around in the kitchen, humming to herself. The sound made my stomach turn. I put the dress back exactly where I'd found it and grabbed my clothes. In the shower, I tried to think of innocent explanations. Maybe she'd bought the dress hoping she'd get invited. Maybe she was planning to return it. Maybe the note on the receipt was a mistake. But even as I tried to convince myself, I knew better. Kayla was planning to go to that wedding, and she didn't want me to know about it. The question was, why? After dinner, I decided to do a little investigating. Kayla was in the living room, watching some reality show about housewives and texting on her phone. I offered to clean up the kitchen, which made her suspicious enough to look up from her screen. "Since when do you volunteer for dishes?" she asked. "Since I'm a loving husband who appreciates his wife's cooking," I said, giving her my most innocent smile. She seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to her phone. I loaded the dishwasher and wiped down the counters, all while thinking about that dress and trying to figure out my next move. I didn't have to wait long. Kayla's phone, which she'd left on the kitchen counter while she went to the bathroom, lit up with a text message. I glanced at it automatically, not meaning to snoop, and saw a name that made my blood pressure spike. Sienna Reynolds. Sienna was Dominic's sister. She was also one of the few people in town who'd always been straight with me about the local drama. If anyone would know what was going on with this wedding situation, it would be her. The text was short. "Can't wait for Saturday. You're going to look amazing." I stared at the phone, my mind racing. Sienna was texting Kayla about Saturday, about looking amazing, about the wedding that Kayla supposedly wasn't invited to. I heard the bathroom door open and quickly looked away from the phone. Kayla came back into the kitchen, picked up her phone, and read the message. I watched her face carefully, and I saw something that confirmed my suspicions. Guilt. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just Sienna being sweet," she said. "She's excited about her brother's wedding." "That's nice. Are we doing anything Saturday?" The question was a test, and Kayla failed it spectacularly. She froze for just a second too long, and when she answered, her voice was too casual. "I don't think so." "Why?" "Just wondering. Maybe we could drive up to Albany, check out that new restaurant you mentioned." "Oh, actually, I think I might have plans with Maddie on Saturday." "Girls' Day, you know?" "Girls' Day, right." "Sounds fun," I said. "What are you guys planning to do?" "Just shopping, maybe get our nails done. Nothing exciting." She was lying and we both knew it. The question was whether she knew that I knew. I decided to push a little further. "Isn't Dominic's wedding this Saturday?" If I'd been looking for a reaction, I got one. Kayla's eyes widened slightly, and she actually took a step backward. "Is it?" I wouldn't know. It's not like I was invited. The bitterness in her voice was real, but it wasn't the bitterness of someone who was resigned to missing an event. It was the bitterness of someone who felt entitled to be there. "Right," I said. "Well, have fun with Maddie." I left the kitchen and went back to the garage, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. My mind was spinning with questions and suspicions, and I felt like I was missing some crucial piece of information. Around 10 o'clock, I heard Kayla talking on the phone again. This time she was in our bedroom with the door closed, but our house was small and the walls were thin. "No, he doesn't suspect anything," she was saying. "He thinks I'm going shopping with you." There was a pause, and then, "Of course I'm nervous, but I can't just not go. This is important, Maddie." Another pause. I know. But what if he sees me there? He. Not they. He. You're right. I'm overthinking this. It's just one day, and then everything goes back to normal. Normal. What exactly was normal in Kayla's world? I heard her hang up, and a few minutes later, she came out to the garage. "I'm going to bed," she said. "You coming?" "In a few minutes." She kissed me goodnight, and I watched her walk back toward the house. She was wearing those shorts again, and normally I would have been distracted by how good she looked. Tonight, all I could think about was how easily she'd lied to my face. After she went inside, I sat in the garage for another hour, drinking beer and trying to figure out what to do. I could confront her directly, but I didn't have enough information yet. I could follow her on Saturday, but that seemed crazy and paranoid. Or I could call Sienna. Sienna Reynolds was about as different from her brother as two siblings could be. Where Dominic was flashy and self-absorbed, Sienna was sharp and practical. She worked as a paralegal at the law firm downtown, and she had a reputation for being brutally honest. She also had no patience for drama, which had always made me wonder how she'd survived growing up with Dominic. I'd met her a few times at town events, and we'd always gotten along well. She'd even made a few comments over the years that suggested she thought Kayla and Dominic's relationship had been toxic for both of them. If Sienna was texting Kayla about the wedding, she might be willing to tell me what was really going on. I pulled out my phone and found her number. It was late, but not too late for a text. "Hey Sienna, it's Jack Kessler. Quick question about Saturday. Kayla mentioned she might see you at some point. Just want to make sure I don't schedule anything that conflicts. Hope the wedding goes well." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The message was casual enough that it wouldn't seem suspicious, but specific enough that Sienna's response would tell me what I needed to know. My phone buzzed almost immediately. "Hey, Jack!" "Yeah, Kayla's coming as my +1. Should be fun." "Didn't she tell you?" I stared at the message for a long time. There it was, in black and white. Kayla was going to the wedding as Sienna's guest, and she'd been lying to me about it for weeks. But why? What was so important about this wedding that she'd risk our marriage to attend? I had a feeling I was about to find out. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect June weather that made Castle Lake look like a postcard. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and just warm enough for the kind of outdoor wedding that would be talked about for years. Kayla was up early, which should have been my first clue. My wife was not a morning person under normal circumstances, but there she was at 7 a.m., showering and doing her hair and acting like she was preparing for the most important day of her life. "I thought you and Maddie weren't meeting until noon," I said, watching her apply makeup with the kind of precision usually reserved for surgical procedures. "We're not, but I want to get my nails done first," she said, without looking at me. "You know how busy the salon gets on Saturdays." Right, the salon that was closed on Saturdays. I'd driven past it enough times to know their schedule. "What time do you think you'll be home?" "Oh, probably not until late. You know how girls' days go. We might grab dinner somewhere." She was getting better at lying, which was somehow worse than when she'd been obvious about it. I watched her get dressed, and I noticed that she was taking extra care with her appearance. Hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, and when she thought I wasn't looking, she sprayed herself with the expensive perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary. "Have fun," I said when she kissed me goodbye. "I will. Love you." And then she was gone, backing out of our driveway in her little Honda Civic, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a decision to make. I could let it go. I could spend the day working on projects in the garage, maybe watch some baseball and pretend I didn't know what was really happening. When Kayla came home, I could act like everything was normal and hope that whatever this was about would blow over, or I could do something about it. I chose option 2. I called Russ, my old army buddy who knew everyone in town and had never met a piece of gossip he didn't like. Jack! What's up, man? Hey, Russ! Quick question. You know anything about Dominic Reynolds' wedding today? Oh yeah, big fancy thing out at the Lakeside Manor. Half the town's going to be there. Why? Just curious. You working tonight? Yeah, I'm on at Murphy's from 6 to close. Why don't you come by? I bet there'll be plenty of wedding drama to discuss by then. Actually, I was thinking of stopping by the manor first. You know, just to see what all the fuss is about. There was a pause, and then Russ's voice got more serious. Jack, please tell me you're not planning to crash your wife's ex-boyfriend's wedding. I'm not planning to crash anything, I'm just curious. Uh-huh. And this curiosity wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that Kayla's been acting weird lately? Sometimes I forgot how observant Russ could be when he wasn't 3 beers deep and telling stories about his ex-wife. Maybe. Okay, look. I'm not going to try to talk you out of this because I know you well enough to know it won't work. But if you're going to do something stupid, at least be smart about it. What do you mean? I mean, don't go alone. You need backup, and you need a legitimate reason to be there. Such as? Such as the fact that Sienna Reynolds asked me to be her date to this thing about a week ago, and I said no because weddings give me hives. But if you want to go, I could call her and see if the offer's still open. I felt a surge of gratitude for Russ that almost overwhelmed me. This was why we'd stayed friends after the army. When things got complicated, he had my back. You'd do that? Hell yeah, I'd do that. This sounds like it could be entertaining. Plus, I like Sienna. She's good people. What about the bar? I'll get Tommy to cover for me until later. This is more important. An hour later, Russ and I were driving toward the Lakeside Manor in his pickup truck, both of us dressed in the kind of clothes that said wedding guest without saying trying too hard. I'd managed to find a decent suit in my closet, and Russ had borrowed a jacket from his brother. So what's the plan here? Russ asked as we pulled into the manor's parking lot. Honestly, I don't have one. I just want to see what Kayla's up to. And then what? I don't know. I guess that depends on what I find. The Lakeside Manor was Castle Lake's premier event venue, which wasn't saying much since it was also the only event venue, but it was genuinely beautiful, with gardens that sloped down toward the lake and a main building that looked like something out of a fairy tale. We found Sienna near the entrance, looking elegant in a dark green dress and talking to a group of people I didn't recognize. When she saw us, her face lit up with surprise and what looked like approval. Russ! You changed your mind. Something like that, Russ said, giving her a hug. You remember Jack Kessler? Of course. Jack, what a nice surprise. I didn't know you were coming. Last-minute decision, I said. Hope that's okay? More than okay. I was dreading being the only single person here. She linked her arm through mine, and I felt a moment of panic. This was really happening. I was about to walk into Dominic Reynolds' wedding as a guest, while my wife was somewhere inside as another guest, and she had no idea I was coming. Is it terrible that I'm actually excited to see how this plays out? Sienna whispered as we walked toward the main building. Probably, I said, but I'm excited too. The ceremony was being held in the manor's garden, with white chairs arranged in neat rows facing a flower-covered arch. Most of the seats were already filled, and I scanned the crowd looking for Kayla. I found her in the 3rd row, sitting next to a woman I didn't recognize. She was wearing the navy blue dress I'd found in our closet, and she looked beautiful. She also looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing around like she was expecting something to happen. There, I said quietly to Sienna, nodding in Kayla's direction. Sienna followed my gaze and frowned. That's interesting. What? She's not sitting with Maddie. That's Rebecca Chen next to her. They barely know each other. So Kayla had lied about the girls' day too. I was starting to wonder if anything she'd told me about today was true. Come on, Sienna said. Let's sit where she can see us. We found seats in the 4th row, directly behind Kayla and slightly to her left. I had a perfect view of her profile, and I watched her face when she realized I was there. It was everything I'd hoped for and worse than I'd expected. First came surprise, her eyes widening as she registered my presence. Then confusion, as she tried to figure out how I'd ended up at a wedding she'd told me I wasn't invited to. Then panic, as she realized that her carefully constructed lies were about to come crashing down. She turned around and stared at me, her mouth slightly open. I smiled and gave her a little wave. "Hi, honey," I mouthed. She spun back around so fast I was surprised she didn't get whiplash. The ceremony was beautiful, I'm sure, but I spent most of it watching Kayla. She was clearly miserable, constantly fidgeting and checking her phone. At one point, she got up and walked toward the back of the seating area, and I thought she might be leaving. But she just stood there for a few minutes, then returned to her seat. When Dominic and Sarah exchanged vows, I saw Kayla wipe her eyes. From my angle, I couldn't tell if she was crying because she was happy for them or because she was heartbroken. Maybe both. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the reception area for cocktails and appetizers. This was where things got interesting. Kayla immediately disappeared, probably to the bathroom to collect herself. Sienna and I got drinks and mingled, and I found myself actually enjoying the party. The Reynolds family had spared no expense, and the food and drinks were excellent. "Jack Kessler, I didn't expect to see you here." I turned around and found myself face to face with Dominic Reynolds himself. He was tall and handsome in the way that trust fund babies often are, with perfect hair and a smile that had probably gotten him out of trouble his entire life. He was also clearly drunk, despite the fact that it was only 4 in the afternoon. "Dominic, congratulations, man. Beautiful ceremony." "Thanks. I'm so glad Sienna brought you. It's always nice to see Kayla's current situation represented." Current situation. There was something in the way he said it that made my jaw clench. "Current situation? You know, her marriage. To you. It's good that you're here to support her on what must be a difficult day." I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was being deliberately insulting or if he was just too drunk and self-absorbed to realize how he sounded. Difficult how? Well, you know, seeing your first love get married to someone else. It can't be easy. First love, not ex-boyfriend. First love. "Right," I said. "Well, Kayla seems to be handling it fine." "Oh, she's stronger than she looks." "Always has been. That's one of the things I always admired about her." Always admired. Present tense. I was starting to get a clearer picture of what was going on here, and I didn't like it. "If you'll excuse me," I said, "I should go find my wife." "Of course. Tell her I said hi." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. Sienna appeared at my elbow almost immediately. That looked tense. He's an ass. Yes, he is. Always has been. But he's also my brother, so I have to love him anyway. "Where do you think Kayla went?" "Probably the ladies' room. Or maybe outside. She looked pretty shaken up during the ceremony. I found her on the terrace overlooking the lake, standing alone with a glass of wine. She'd reapplied her makeup, but I could still see traces of the panic I'd witnessed during the ceremony. "Beautiful view," I said, walking up beside her. She jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Jack!" "You scared me." "Sorry. Mind if I join you?" She looked like she minded very much, but she nodded anyway. "So," I said, "how's your girls' day going?" The color drained from her face. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can." "I'd love to hear it." She took a sip of wine, clearly stalling for time. "I didn't want to hurt your feelings." "By lying to me?" "By coming to my ex-boyfriend's wedding." "I knew it would make you uncomfortable." "So instead you decided to sneak around behind my back?" "It wasn't sneaking around. I needed closure, Jack. Dominic and I have history, and I needed to see him get married so I could move on completely." Closure. That was a new one. "And you couldn't have just told me that? Would you have understood?" "I guess we'll never know, since you didn't give me the chance." She looked out at the lake, and I could see tears forming in her eyes again. I'm sorry, Jack. I really am. I know I should have told you the truth. Yeah, you should have. We stood there in silence for a few minutes, watching the sun reflect off the water. I was angry, but I was also confused. If this was really just about closure, why had she been so secretive about it? And why had Dominic made those comments about her being strong and admirable? Kayla, can I ask you something? Okay. Are you happy? In our marriage, I mean. The question seemed to catch her off guard. Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that? Because you've been acting strange lately. And not just about this wedding. You've been distant, secretive. Like you're hiding something. I'm not hiding anything. I was just stressed about today. And now that today's almost over, now I can focus on us again. She turned to face me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married. Vulnerable and sincere and maybe a little lost. I love you, Jack. I know I screwed up by not telling you about today, but I love you. I love you too, I said, and I meant it. But Kayla, if there's something else going on, something you need to tell me, now would be a good time. For just a second, I thought she might actually confess to whatever she was really hiding. But then her phone buzzed with a text message, and the moment was gone. She glanced at the phone and I saw her expression change. Everything okay? Yeah, just Maddie wondering where I am. Another lie. I could see the name on her phone screen and it wasn't Maddie, it was Dominic. The text from Dominic changed everything. Not just because Kayla was still lying to me, but because of what happened next. She read the message, and I watched her face cycle through a series of emotions. Surprise, concern, and then something that looked almost like guilt. I should probably get going, she said, not meeting my eyes. The reception just started. I know, but I'm not feeling great. Too much wine, I think. I'll drive you home. No! The word came out sharper than she'd intended, and she immediately tried to soften it. I mean, you should stay and have fun. Sienna brought you, and it would be rude to leave her without a date. Sienna will understand. Jack, please. I just want to go home and lie down. I'll see you later tonight, okay? She kissed me quickly and walked away before I could argue. I watched her go, noting that she didn't head toward the parking lot. Instead, she went back into the main building. I waited a few minutes, then followed her inside. The reception was in full swing now, with a band playing and people dancing. I scanned the crowd but couldn't see Kayla anywhere. Looking for someone? Sienna appeared beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. Kayla said she was leaving, but I don't think she actually left. That's interesting. Why? Because I just saw Dominic disappear too, about 5 minutes ago. My stomach dropped. Where did he go? I don't know, but his new wife is looking for him. She asked me if I'd seen him. I took one of the champagne glasses and downed it in one gulp. Jack, what exactly do you think is going on here? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. The Lakeside Manor was a big place, with multiple rooms and corridors. If Kayla and Dominic had gone somewhere to talk privately, they could be anywhere. But I had a feeling I knew where to look. I'd been to the manor a few times for other events, and I knew there was a small office on the 2nd floor that was usually unlocked during parties. It was quiet, private, and had a view of the lake. If I were looking for a place to have a secret conversation, that's where I'd go. I found the staircase and made my way to the 2nd floor, trying to look casual in case anyone saw me. The hallway was empty, but I could hear voices coming from the direction of the office. I moved closer, and the voices became clearer. Kayla and Dominic, having what sounded like an intense conversation. Can't keep doing this, Kayla was saying. I know. But what choice do I have? Sarah doesn't understand me the way you do. You just married her, Dominic. You made vows. Vows I shouldn't have made. Kayla, you know as well as I do that we belong together. We always have. My heart was pounding so hard I was surprised they couldn't hear it through the door. That's not fair. I'm married too. To a guy who doesn't appreciate you. Come on, Kayla. When's the last time Jack made you feel the way I do? There was a long pause, and when Kayla spoke again, her voice was softer. That's not the point. Isn't it? You came here today, didn't you? Despite everything, you came. I came for closure. Bullshit. You came because you still love me. Another pause, longer this time. Dominic, just say it, Kayla. Say you still love me. I couldn't listen to any more. I pushed open the door and walked into the room. They were standing by the window, close enough to touch, but not quite touching. Kayla's face went white when she saw me, and Dominic just looked annoyed. Jack, Kayla said. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like my wife is having a secret meeting with her ex-boyfriend at his wedding. We were just talking. I heard what you were talking about. Dominic stepped forward, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Look, Jack, this is between Kayla and me. It doesn't concern you. My wife doesn't concern me? Your wife is in love with someone else. Maybe it's time you accepted that. The words hit me like a physical blow, partly because of how cruel they were, and partly because I was afraid they might be true. Is that right, Kayla? Are you in love with someone else? She looked back and forth between Dominic and me, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. You don't know? I'm confused, Jack. I thought I was over Dominic, but seeing him today, being here, it brought back a lot of feelings. What kind of feelings? The kind that make her realize she married the wrong person, Dominic said. I turned to face him, and for a moment I seriously considered hitting him. He was drunk, arrogant, and apparently determined to destroy my marriage on his wedding day. You know what, Dominic? Congratulations. You just got married to a wonderful woman who deserves better than a husband who's trying to seduce his ex-girlfriend at their wedding reception. Sarah will understand eventually. Will she? Should we go downstairs and ask her? That seemed to sober him up a little. You wouldn't. Try me. I looked at Kayla, who was still crying. Kayla, I'm going home. When you figure out what you want, let me know. I walked out of the room and back down the stairs, my mind reeling. I found Sienna in the reception area and told her I was leaving. What happened? I found them. Oh, Jack. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Thanks for bringing me. At least now I know what I'm dealing with. What are you going to do? I have no idea. I drove home in a daze, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My wife was in love with another man. My wife had lied to me repeatedly. My wife was, at this very moment, probably still at that wedding, deciding whether to stay married to me or run away with her ex-boyfriend. When I got home, I went straight to the garage and opened a beer. Then another. By the time Kayla came home around midnight, I was well on my way to drunk. She found me in the garage, sitting in my old lawn chair and staring at nothing. Jack? How was the rest of the reception? Jack, we need to talk. Do we? Because I feel like I heard everything I needed to hear. She sat down on an overturned crate across from me. I'm sorry you had to find out like that. Find out what exactly? That I still have feelings for Dominic. There it was. The truth I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. How long? How long what? How long have you known you still love him? I don't know if I love him. I'm confused. That's not an answer. She was quiet for a long time, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Since he got engaged. When I saw the announcement in the paper, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I realized I'd never really gotten over him. And you didn't think that was something you should share with your husband? What was I supposed to say? Hey, Jack, I know we're married, but I think I'm still in love with my ex-boyfriend. Yeah, actually. That's exactly what you should have said. It would have destroyed us. As opposed to what's happening now? She started crying again, and despite everything, I felt sorry for her. This was a mess, but it wasn't entirely her fault. People can't control who they love. What do you want, Kayla? Do you want to stay married to me or do you want to be with Dominic? I don't know. That's not good enough. I need an answer. Can't you give me some time to figure it out? How much time? I don't know. A few weeks, maybe? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. A few weeks. So I should just sit here and wait while you decide whether you want to be married to me or not? Jack, please. I know this is hard, but I need time to think. Here's the thing, Kayla. I'm not going to wait around while you figure out your feelings. If you don't know whether you want to be married to me, then maybe you shouldn't be married to me. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you should go stay with Maddie for a while. Give yourself some space to think. You're kicking me out? I'm giving you what you asked for. Time and space. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide whether to fight or flee. She chose to flee. Fine. I'll pack a bag. Take your time. Take whatever you need. She stood up and walked toward the house, then stopped and turned back. Jack? Yeah? I do love you. I know that doesn't help right now, but I do. I love you too, Kayla. That's why this hurts so much. She nodded and went inside. I heard her moving around in the bedroom, opening drawers and closets. 20 minutes later, she came back to the garage with a suitcase. I'll call you in a few days. Okay? She hesitated, like she wanted to say something else, but then she just got in her car and drove away. I sat in the garage for another hour, drinking beer and trying to figure out what had just happened to my life. This morning, I'd been married to a woman I loved and trusted. Tonight, I was alone in my house, wondering if my marriage was over. The worst part was that I still didn't know the whole truth. I knew Kayla had feelings for Dominic, but I didn't know how far those feelings had gone. Had they been having an affair? Were they planning to leave their respective spouses? Or was this just a case of unresolved emotions that had gotten out of hand? I had a feeling I was going to find out soon enough. 3 days passed without a word from Kayla. 3 days of me rattling around our empty house, trying to work and failing, trying to sleep and failing, trying to pretend that my life wasn't falling apart. On Wednesday evening, Russ showed up at my door with a 6-pack of beer and a grim expression. "We need to talk," he said. About what? About what everyone in town is talking about. About your wife and Dominic Reynolds. My stomach clenched. What about them? Jack, they've been seen together, multiple times, since the wedding. I let him in and we sat at my kitchen table. Russ opened 2 beers and slid one across to me. Tell me. Tuesday morning, they were having breakfast at that little cafe on Main Street. Yesterday, someone saw Dominic's car parked outside Maddie's apartment, where Kayla's staying, for 3 hours. 3 hours. Yeah. And Jack, there's something else. What? Sarah Reynolds filed for an annulment yesterday. The marriage is over. I stared at him. After 4 days? Apparently, Dominic confessed everything to her on Sunday night. Told her he was still in love with Kayla and couldn't go through with the marriage. Jesus. It gets worse. Word is that Kayla and Dominic are planning to leave town together, maybe as early as this weekend. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Not only was my wife in love with another man, but she was planning to run away with him without even having the decency to tell me herself. Who told you this? Sienna. She's furious with her brother. Says he's destroyed 2 marriages and humiliated Sarah in front of the whole town. And Kayla's just going along with it? Seems like it. I drank my beer and tried to process this information. Part of me wanted to drive over to Maddie's apartment and confront them both. Part of me wanted to pack my own bags and leave town, before I had to watch them parade their relationship around Castle Lake. But there was another part of me, a part that was getting stronger by the minute, that wanted revenge. Russ, I need to ask you a favor. Name it. I want to throw a party. A party? Yeah, a going-away party. For Kayla and Dominic. Russ stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Jack, what are you planning? I'm planning to give them the send-off they deserve. The next morning, I started making phone calls. First to Sienna, who was more than happy to help with what she called Operation Public Humiliation. Then to various friends and acquaintances around town, spreading the word about a party at Murphy's Tavern on Friday night. It's a celebration, I told everyone. Kayla and Dominic have found true love, and they deserve to be celebrated before they start their new life together. The word spread quickly, as word always does in small towns. By Thursday afternoon, half of Castle Lake was talking about the party. By Friday morning, Kayla had heard about it. She called me for the first time since she'd left. Jack, what the hell are you doing? I'm throwing you a party. Don't you feel honored? This isn't funny. You're right, it's not funny at all. You can't do this. Actually, I can. Murphy's is a public establishment, and I'm not doing anything illegal. You're trying to humiliate me. No, Kayla. You humiliated yourself. I'm just making sure everyone gets to witness it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jack, please. Don't do this. We can work things out. Can we? Because from what I hear, you're leaving town with Dominic this weekend. Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true? Another silence. We're thinking about it. Well then, you definitely deserve a party. I hung up before she could say anything else. Friday evening, Murphy's Tavern was packed. Word about the party had spread beyond Castle Lake, and people had driven in from neighboring towns to witness what was being billed as the social event of the year. I arrived early and found Russ behind the bar, grinning like a maniac. This is either the best idea you've ever had or the worst, he said. Probably both. Sienna was already there, looking elegant and dangerous in a black dress. She'd brought a photographer friend from Albany, ostensibly to document the celebration. Any sign of the guests of honor? I asked. Not yet. But they'll show up. They have to. Why? Because if they don't, everyone will assume they're cowards. And if they do, everyone will get to see exactly what kind of people they are. By 8 o'clock, the place was standing room only. People were spilling out onto the sidewalk, and Russ had called in his brother to help behind the bar. At 8:30, they arrived. Kayla came in first, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, clearly having dressed down in an attempt to avoid attention. It didn't work. Dominic followed behind her, trying to look confident, but failing miserably. He was pale and kept glancing around the room like he was expecting someone to attack him. The crowd parted as they made their way to the bar, and I could hear whispers and murmurs following in their wake. I walked over to them, carrying a microphone I'd borrowed from the tavern's karaoke setup. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying over the crowd, our guests of honor have arrived. The room fell silent. I'd like to propose a toast, I continued, to Kayla and Dominic. Two people who have shown us all what true love really looks like. I paused, letting the words sink in. True love, it turns out, is lying to your spouse for weeks. True love is sneaking around behind people's backs. True love is destroying a marriage that lasted 4 days because you can't stand the thought of someone else being happy. Kayla was staring at me with horror, and Dominic looked like he was about to be sick. But most importantly, I went on, true love is being too cowardly to end your current relationships before starting new ones. Because why be honest when you can be selfish? Jack, stop, Kayla said, but her voice was barely audible over the murmur of the crowd. Oh, I'm just getting started. You see, folks, Kayla here has been married to me for 18 months. 18 months of me thinking I had a partner, a teammate, someone who had my back. Turns out what I actually had was someone who was just biding her time until something better came along. I turned to face Dominic. And Dominic here, well, Dominic is a real piece of work. He got married on Saturday to a lovely woman named Sarah. By Sunday night, he was confessing his love for another man's wife. By Wednesday, he was filing for an annulment. That's got to be some kind of record. That's enough, Dominic said, finally finding his voice. Is it? Because I feel like I'm just getting warmed up. I turned back to the crowd. The best part of this whole story is that they think they're the victims here. Poor Kayla, trapped in a marriage to a man who loves her. Poor Dominic, forced to marry someone other than his one true love. It's like a fairy tale if fairy tales were about selfish, lying cowards. Jack, please. Kayla was crying now, but I was past the point of caring. You know what the really funny thing is? I would have let you go, Kayla. If you'd been honest with me, if you'd told me the truth about your feelings, I would have stepped aside. Because I love you, and I want you to be happy. But instead you chose to lie and sneak around and treat me like an idiot. I handed the microphone to Sienna and walked over to where Kayla and Dominic were standing. So here's what's going to happen. You two are going to leave Castle Lake, just like you planned. But you're going to leave knowing that everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of people you are. You're going to leave knowing that your reputation, your family's reputation, and any chance you had of ever coming back here with your heads held high is gone. I looked directly at Kayla. And you're going to leave knowing that you threw away something real for something that probably won't last 6 months. Dominic stepped forward, and for a moment, I thought he might actually try to fight me. But then he looked around the room at all the faces staring at him with disgust and contempt, and he seemed to deflate. Come on, Kayla, he said. Let's get out of here. They pushed their way through the crowd and out the door. Through the windows, I could see them having what looked like an argument on the sidewalk. Then they got into Dominic's car and drove away. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. People were patting me on the back, buying me drinks, and telling me what a great show it had been. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. Sienna appeared at my elbow with a glass of whiskey. How do you feel? She asked. Like I just burned down my entire life. Sometimes that's what it takes to build something better. Is it? I don't know. But I do know that you deserved better than what Kayla was giving you. And now everyone else knows it too. I looked around the room at all the people celebrating my public humiliation of my wife and her lover. They were having a great time, but I realized that this wasn't really about them. It was about me refusing to be a victim, refusing to let Kayla and Dominic write the story of my life. You know what the best part is? Sienna said. What? Sarah Reynolds was here tonight. She saw the whole thing. I looked around and spotted Sarah near the back of the room. She was smiling, and when she saw me looking, she raised her glass in a toast. She wanted to thank you, Sienna continued. She said you gave her the closure she needed. What do you mean? She said seeing Kayla and Dominic tonight, seeing how they handled being confronted with the truth about themselves, made her realize she dodged a bullet. She's not heartbroken anymore. She's grateful. I walked over to Sarah and introduced myself properly. I'm sorry about your marriage, I said. Don't be. You did me a favor. Both of us, actually. How do you figure? You showed me who Dominic really is before I wasted years of my life with him. And you showed yourself that you're stronger than you think. Am I? You just stood up in front of half the town and refused to let two people make you look like a fool. That takes courage. She was right, I realized. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Not a victim, not a fool, but a man who had been wronged and had done something about it. Kayla and Dominic left town the next morning. I heard from Sienna that they were moving to Albany, where Dominic had some family connections. I also heard that they'd broken up before they even made it out of the county, but I never found out if that was true. I didn't care. They were out of my life, and I was free to start over. 6 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern with Sarah Reynolds, who had become a good friend and eventually something more. We were laughing about something Russ had said when Sienna walked in with a newspaper. "You guys need to see this," she said, spreading the paper on our table. It was the Albany Times-Union, and there was a small item in the local news section: "Local man arrested for check fraud." The mugshot showed Dominic Reynolds, looking significantly less handsome than he had at his wedding. "Apparently he's been writing bad checks all over Albany," Sienna said. "The police think he's been doing it for months." Sarah and I looked at each other and started laughing. "I really did dodge a bullet," Sarah said. "We both did," I agreed. As I sat there with my new girlfriend and my friends, looking at the picture of the man who had tried to destroy my life, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. Gratitude that Kayla had shown me who she really was before I wasted more years with her. Gratitude that I'd found the courage to stand up for myself. And gratitude that sometimes, when your life falls apart, it's actually falling together. I raised my glass in a toast. To dodged bullets and second chances. And to revenge served cold, Russ added with a grin. We drank to that, and I realized that this was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but honest. Not the life I'd planned, but the life I'd earned. And that was enough.